If you're going to grow, you have to market. You can't think that lawyers are a profession and we're too good to advertise and all of that stuff. If not, you're not going to go anywhere because nobody's going to know what product you're trying to give them.
Welcome to Hot Docket, the show where we talk about winning marketing strategies that have built the most successful law firms.
Join us every 2 weeks for the latest trends and tactics to grow your law firm. Welcome to the Hot Docket. Today we're joined by Jonathan Breeden of Breeden Law, and we're going to talk a little bit about family law and marketing. One thing we wanted to just address right off the get-go is you started your firm and have built out to be probably one of the biggest in the North Carolina market for family law. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey as an attorney and how you started your firm?
Yeah, it's interesting. I appreciate y'all having me on. I would love to get some of those Hot Docket socks, though. I'm a big fan of different kinds of socks. But no, I'm Jonathan Breeden. I'm a divorce lawyer in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been here in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina. Started my firm in October of 2000. I came straight out of law school. I went to NC State, go Wolfpack undergrad, got a political science degree, went to Campbell's Law School, which is now Campbell University's law school, which is now in downtown Raleigh, but at the time was back on its original on the Campbell campus in Bowie's Creek, about 45 minutes south of Raleigh. And, I always wanted to start my own law firm. I actually chose Campbell University School of Law because I wanted to start my own law firm because it had a start your own law firm class. It had an entire program and was designed to help people do that because it was a law school that even to this day is focused on actual practical skills and actual trial skills and being able to represent people, not theories of laws and how it should be and all that stuff. It's really how you do things. And that was the purpose of that law school being started back in the mid 70s. And it is still its purpose today. And so, I'm one of those people that decided to go to law school in ninth grade because I loved high school civics and the Federalist Papers and the Constitution and the development of this government that they were coming up with that we still live under. And I was fascinated. I like to argue. I was a pretty good writer. I was a pretty good speaker. And I thought, you know what, law, I could advocate for people. I've got this big sense of justice would be a good thing for me. So I decided at 14 years old, I was going to become a lawyer. And it wasn't long after that I decided I was probably going to go to Campbell's Law School. Most people don't know what they're going to do that age, but it's been an interesting journey since I started. The first 17 or 18 years was just like anybody else's journey. I was a solo for some of that. I had paralegals. I had some associates that would stay for a year or two. We weren't paying them a whole lot of money. We'd use them as paralegals more than actual associates. But this thing really started to turn around in 2016. Well, it started down this path towards one of the biggest family law firms in North Carolina in 2016 when we switched website providers from FindLaw to Postali, a company out of Columbus, Ohio. And I went from a website that was not working to a website within 18 months. It was one of the top 10 websites in North Carolina. And all of a sudden you go from, you don't have enough leads and you don't know what you're doing, and you got more leads and you know what to do with. But until you start to learn how to manage those leads, you're just chasing your tail. And so, so we had to go from there. I know that's sort of a long answer. We'll get into more of this, but it started with this growth trend started with getting a website that worked.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks end up starting the budget route and going with a enormous provider. You get a cookie cutter templated site, and in your mind you think, okay, I have a website, the clients are going to come, and then you don't realize there's 50,000 other firms that consumers have the option to choose from. Most of them don't have any level of differentiation or branding, and that's kind of where the journey begins. So to give it a little bit of advice to new lawyers out there, would you say from the get-go to spend the money and produce a high quality site with a smaller provider? Or starting over again, would you have started with like a templated cookie cutter fine law site?
I don't know. I mean, I had some revenue that allowed me to invest what I invested in this custom site. Now, when I got with Postali, I was spending $4,000 or $5,000 a month with them, and now I spend $10,000 a month. So I know people listening to this are about to drive off the side of the road, but like you have to understand, like it can take money to make money, right? And if you can get these leads and you can manage the leads properly, then you're going to make money exponentially. But and they do more than just the website. I mean, they're a full service marketing firm. I know y'all do a lot of marketing and stuff. And I would say, tell people they should get a marketing, somebody to help them. You know what I mean? Do marketing holistically, develop a logo, develop what you're going to say, figure out who you're going to say it to, how you're going to say it, all of that, and yeah, maybe, I don't know that you have to spend as much as I spent, because I already had a pretty decent sized little business when I got to them, which allowed me to be able to, it was still a lot of money, and it was way more money than anybody I knew was paying. But I knew that if I was going to get this done right, I was going to have to spend money to pay professionals to do it. And it's the single best investment I've made since I started the business, was getting a company like them. And they were actually recommended to me by search engine guys out of Austin, Texas, because they had a site in Raleigh and had a non-compete. And so what I would say to people is go out there, find the top sites, find who did them. Maybe they're non-competes and they can't compete, but call them and ask them. Say, do you have a non-compete in this market? And if you do, who would you recommend? And that's how I found this small company in Columbus, Ohio, Postali, was by calling a bigger company like search engine guys out of Austin, Texas, and they're still out there and they're still doing a great job for people. And y'all may have heard of them. Scorpion's out there as well. I never use them, but I know people say they do okay, but I don't know. But I mean, there's people out there to do it. And, I think that's important that you realize that you have to market, right? That's the first thing, right? The first thing is you are a business owner. And if you're going to grow, you have to market. You can't think that lawyers are a profession and we're too good to advertise and all of that stuff. If not, you're not going to go anywhere, because nobody's going to know what product you're trying to give them.
Yep. So jumping back a little bit, you said that when you went to law school, you liked that school because they did a lot of practicals. Can you give a few examples that are something that stuck with you even till today?
Yeah, well, I mean, they absolutely required you to take a trial advocacy class, and you had to successfully complete an entire trial to pass the class and get a grade, right? And if you couldn't pass the trial, you couldn't pass the class, and you couldn't graduate. And so, a lot of law schools don't even have courtrooms, right? They don't know anything about trial ad or any of that stuff. So that was one of the things. The other thing is this school, and there are other schools like it out there in North Carolina. Elon University School of Law is another practical school. I know that Nova Southeastern in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, they've always been known for being a practical education school, as is Baylor in Texas. So, I mean, they're out there, you know what I mean? And they don't hide that they're, practical schools versus theory schools, like the bigger name schools like Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel Hill, or Duke, or Wake Forest here in North Carolina. But, they also had classes like district court practice taught by a district court judge. And in North Carolina, district court is where all the misdemeanors are dealt with and all the family law is. So you had a judge that was hearing these family law cases and these misdemeanors, which is where the money's at in criminal law a lot of times, these bread and butter, DWIs, assault, stuff like that. There's a lot of them, you can charge and do a bunch of them at one time, to have a judge come and teach that class. I've never heard of that class in any other North Carolina law schools, but they had it at Campbell. So stuff like that was very important. So, and look, when I came out, I didn't absolutely know what I was doing, but I knew enough to not get in trouble.
Did you always know you wanted to be a law business and not like a solo? We had a guy on maybe a couple episodes ago or last episode who, depending on when things air, who he always knew he wanted to be a solo. He kind of had that mindset going in where he wants to be close to the practice, close to the clients, so on and so forth, just a different mindset. Do you like how do you stand on that, and where do you
You
land?
know, I wanted to work for myself. You know, my father was a CPA and he owned a small accounting firm in Laurinburg, North Carolina, which is right on the North Carolina, South Carolina line. Laurinburg, I grew up there. It had 25,000 people, very small town, not far from south of the border. For those of y'all that have been up on I-95 at the North Carolina, South Carolina line, everybody's ever driven
Love
by
south of the
there
border.
knows where I'm talking about. I grew up not far
It's the
from there.
best, yeah.
And an impoverished area of the world, no doubt about it. But it was fun growing up in that small town. But you know, I just watched him represent small businesses and the struggles that they would go through and the struggles he went through as a small business owner. But the thing was, he always enjoyed going to work. It didn't matter how many hours he worked. He was going to work with a smile on his face because he worked for himself and he was going to try to figure out how to save small businesses money. And he had control over his schedule. So all of my ball games and plays and Boy Scouts and all that stuff, he was always there. My mom was an emergency room nurse. So my mom had to work at the hospital. My mom got to what she could get to, but missed more than she got to because when you're at the hospital, you're at the hospital. And so I learned very quickly that being able to control your schedule and having control over what you do with your time is something important, especially if you're going to have a family like I do now. And so that was one of the reasons I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to make it as big as I could make it. I don't think I ever dreamed it would get as big as it is now with 23 employees or any of that. But I did want to work for myself and build a business that would allow myself to live a nice life and have a little bit of control over my schedule. I don't think I know I never got this far. What happened in the last 4 years is still, I mean, I wake up every day and sort of pinch myself. I mean, I did it, but it's still like, I can't believe I've done this. I can't believe I have all these employees. You know, we'll have an all hands meeting after I get off of this podcast recorded with y'all, and there'll be 20, 21 people on it. Not everybody works every day. We got part-time employees. I got employees in El Salvador and the Philippines, and I still look at that Zoom screen and I'm like, all these people work for me? I still ask myself that question. Like, even now, I'm like, golly, what an awesome responsibility, but what an awesome gift that these talented people would want to work for me. But you have to build something that they want to work at. And so I had a really hard time building a firm that had the right culture and the right people. And I went through lots and lots of turnover until I finally figured it out.
Is business harder or is the law harder?
Golly, I enjoy the business part more than I enjoy the practice of law at this point. I've tried all the custody cases that I need to try. I've tried all the divorces that I need to try in my 25 years of practice. And if I don't try another custody case and I don't try another divorce before I retire, I don't think that's going to hurt my feelings. I really enjoy the business side of it. I enjoy the time freedom of not being on the court schedule. I think the business side is probably a little harder to figure out because once you know the law, you kind of know the law. But I find the business side way more fascinating and interesting.
How did you decide to go into family law?
It kind of found me. I came out, I started my own law firm in an area where I knew nobody. I'm in the suburbs of Raleigh. I'm just southeast of Raleigh. In my primary county of Johnson County is where I-40 and I-95 meet. So anybody that's ever been where those two interstates meet, the two biggest interstates, I believe in the United States, meet about 10 miles from my office in Johnston County. And so I came here, and so I was in a fast-growing area because Raleigh's exploding. I'm in the suburbs of Raleigh, and what there was to do that I could figure out was criminal defense, family law, and real estate closings. And I absolutely did not want to do real estate closings because I saw a HUD form as 100 ways to get sued. And so I started doing criminal defense, and I got on all the court-appointed lists. And then I also got on the court-appointed list representing parents whose children have been put in foster care for abuse, neglect, and dependency. And even though you lose a lot representing parents where their kids are in the foster care system, I really started to find my passion fighting for these parents and trying to get their kids back. And then it wasn't long out here in the suburbs of young families started coming to my door asking me if I did child custody. And I was like, I want to eat, so yes. And I sort of figured it out over time. I mean, I'd taken family law in law school and stuff like that, but yeah, it was fun. And then once you started helping kids, I couldn't stop helping children. You know what I mean? And I spent the first 3 or 4 or 5 years in disbelief of the situations children were living in, because I had no idea of the abuse and the suffering that kids suffer from, the domestic violence they witness, and all of that, just living my little sheltered life in a small town in Laurinburg. And I would routinely call my mom, and I'm like, you're not going to believe this. And she would be like, son, I've worked in emergency rooms for 20 years. Like, I've seen all of that and worse. And I'm like, well, I didn't know this existed. She said, you didn't need to know. And if you don't do this kind of law, you'll never see it again. So you either have to be able to emotionally deal with what you're seeing or go do something else.
That same guest we had that was talking about like being a solo said something, he was a family lawyer, said something that I thought was pretty striking around how the different family lawyers approach the problem. How some want to make sure that they're fighting for like every penny and like going aggressive and hard and whatever. And some are about like, I don't know, preserving like a child's innocence and not, putting the mom on the stand and like laying out all the terrible things about them. And then these two people have to go back and co-parent and go to school events together. So I think there's a lot of nuance in family law and a lot of ways to be successful and probably to fail too. But there's like a real spectrum there.
I agree 100%. And I've always tried to get these cases worked out. And because I know that, what we're doing in family law is taking 1 or 2 minor problems. Now, sometimes there are major problems, drugs, alcohol, all that stuff. But oftentimes you're splitting hairs and you're finding a string on those Hot Dock socks and you're just pulling it. And you're trying to make these people look as bad as they can look. And they're not bad people, just to try to get an edge so you can get more time with the kid or more alimony or something. And I never liked that part of it. But, if that was the only way to get what was fair, then that's what we did. But I would always try to work cases out if I could.
So going back to what you were saying, Bobby, what do you think are the different categories of reputation different family law firms could have to other family law firms? Like you were saying, there are the ones that are aggressive. They're the ones that are super fair. What do you think are the different categories when you think about law firms, maybe in your area, when you go up against them? If you had to put them in super simple categories, how would you bucket it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the cities are way different than the suburbs. And I don't care what city you're in around the country, right? Like the city of Raleigh, the lawyers are more cutthroat, more after every dime, more in some ways unprofessional, borderline unethical in general than you would find in the suburbs. And this is sort of nationwide. I've talked to attorneys from all over the country, and the cities are always more cutthroat and more difficult than in the suburbs. Some of that is, in the cities, I might have a case with you today, and I might not, and you may be not very nice to me or lie to me, and I might not have another case with you for 4 years for me to remember that you lied to me, right? But in the suburbs, there's not that many of us. And so I'm always going to have 2 or 3 cases with you for the rest of my career if we're established out here in the suburbs. So if I lie to you in the Smith case, I still need you to believe me in the Jones case. So being difficult to get along with makes my life more difficult because I'm always going to be dealing with you because we're always going to be going against each other. And in the cities, you don't have that familiarity. And I think that's part of it in just the profession in general. I wish it wasn't that way. Also, there's too many lawyers in most cities in America, and there's not enough lawyers in the suburbs. And so it becomes the lawyers in the cities have to make every dime they can make on every case and blow small cases into big cases so they can pay their bills. Where in the suburbs, there's more than any of us can humanly do. And so we're just trying to get the best outcomes.
That's interesting. I've never heard that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I haven't heard that either. Do you have any horror stories of like an example of a firm that their reputation became so bad that it's like the downfall of them, or not really?
Yeah, I mean, there's one right now that has been in business in Raleigh for, 20 years. It's a small firm. There's 2 or 3 lawyers, but the person who owns it is difficult. And now they are looking to go out and get a job at a firm because, they're tired of running their own shop, and they're struggling because people don't want to employ somebody that was that difficult to deal with at their firm because you don't want that reputation, right? Some firms don't. Now, somebody will hire that person, but that's just how it goes. So, I mean, like I said, you have to be responsible for you, right? You have to be able to sleep at night. If you're an honest, ethical person, you should practice law in an honest, ethical way. And if you're against somebody that doesn't do it that way, there's nothing you can do about them, and you're not going to change them. So you just do the best you can for your client, understanding what you're dealing with. But I do tell my clients it's going to cost a lot more money because that person is not going to be easy to deal with. They're not going to want to settle. They're not going to, and that's just how it goes. Lawyers are people, right? They've got all the same problems everybody else has got.
So we like to wrap up with a game, Jonathan, and today's game is going to be define that word. I have a made-up word, which we may or may not have used at some point, but I kind of like the idea of seeing how different your answer is from some other people. And you're going to give a definition for it. So made-up word, there is no right answer to this question. Okay, the word is dravish.
Dravish?
Dravish.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Dravish. I don't know. I mean, when I think of drab, I think of sort of drab. like drab, like something is drab, but it's over the top drab, something like that. I guess I don't know. I don't know that word. It's a made up word.
I think we got that. That sounds pretty close to.
I don't know what to say. I would say something that's drab and over the top.
So for the definitions of that, we've got drab. We've got a cool thing kids are saying these days. And what was the last one?
Stuffy.
Stuffy and drab are probably hand in hand.
That's cool.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us today, Jonathan. This was great. Where can people find out more about you, your firm, what you got going on?
You can reach out to me at breedenfirm.com. That's BREEDEN firm.com. I'm also on LinkedIn at Jonathan, Jonathan Breeden, Breeden. I'm on Twitter at Breeden Law NC. I'm on Instagram and TikTok, I am told, even though I don't have it, at Breeden Law Office. Like I said, we're here in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina, doing lots and lots of family law, representing a lot of different people. I would say we didn't get a chance to get into today, but if you're listening to this, get a business coach, get somebody to help you figure this out. Like, part of the reason I was able to scale was I was able to hire a coach by the name of Richard James, and Your Practice Mastered. And I learned more of the business side of law. And because it is a business, and I think everybody needs a coach. Tiger Woods has a coach. Serena Williams has a coach. I have a coach. I think that's very, very important. We talked about getting a good website and also getting a coach to help you do the business side of this, because it's not natural to anybody and they don't teach it in law school.
Great advice. Thanks again for joining us, Jonathan. And we'll put all those links and such in our show notes too. See you on the next Hot Docket. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Hot Docket. We're your hosts, Bobby and Andrew, founders of Mean Pug, the marketing agency for ambitious law firms.
Have questions about marketing or anything we covered today? Email us at bark@meanpug.com.